Hello, chefs. This is Chef's PSA. I'm your host, André Natera. Today I'm joined by legendary chef David Breeden. From the Appalachia to the French Laundry, that includes nearly 2 decades between per se and 13 years as the French Laundry's chef de cuisine. Chef David now leads guest-driven hospitality. In this episode, he reflects on mentorship, legacy, loss, ingredient respect, and what comes next. This is a very powerful one. Stay tuned. Chef, it's good to see you. It's been too long. First of all, thanks for being on. I know we've been trying to get this done for quite some time. And I have so many things that I want to talk to you about. And it's like, where do we begin? But I think first and most importantly, the big question I'd start out with is like, how does someone go from Appalachia to being the executive chef at arguably one of the greatest restaurants in the world?
Yeah, it's a good one. Being a native Appalachian, that's something very important to me.
Yeah,
that's in my DNA, my heart, my soul. I never thought I would leave, but I fell in love with cuisine at some point, in a very roundabout way. I was very fortunate when I was young to be raised in an agricultural environment. I had, a huge garden in my backyard where I was raised with my grandmother. My community is agricultural based. At one point I lived on a dairy farm. We would put away the vegetables after they were harvested. We would can, we would make marmalades, we would make jams, jellies, pickles, preserves. A couple of notable ones. My grandmother Betty Jo Breeden's Chow Chow is incredible. I still serve it to this day on all of my menus that I do, and her blue ribbon pickles are served worldwide.
Yeah,
through that influence. So I grew up around food. We celebrated food. So I was in love with food. I was in love with communal dining. Sunday suppers were a very important thing. On Sundays after church, my whole family would come together at my grandmother's house, and we would prepare a meal, or my grandmother would prepare a meal, much like potluck. Maybe my aunt would bring her famous cherry cheesecake pie type like thing, or crisp or crumble or whatever you want to call it. And my uncle would bring this Southern style pickled shrimp, which was incredible. And we would have it every week. And we would sit around the table and celebrate the meal, and we would celebrate the dishes, and we would celebrate the communion with each other. And to me, that's how I entered my love for cooking. I had no idea where it would go or how it would go, but I knew I loved to eat. Of course, I was a little fat kid in the corner, like just munching away, and I really enjoyed the civility of everyone at the table, because away from the table, everyone would, they were a little different.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got into it, in a way, my pursuit for cuisine.
So at what point do you say, I want to be a chef? Like this is, was it early on, like when you were at the table thinking about it, like I like this, or was it later on? Did you just, I guess a better question would be, is this something that you chose, or did it choose you?
It chose. Okay. That's a great perspective, because I had a familiarity with cuisine, with Mother Nature, with the earth, with cycles of life, with cycles of growing, agriculturally. At some point, I was just very familiar. And that was my biggest asset going into chasing my profession, was understanding the ebbs and flows of Mother Nature, of life, of harvesting, processing, chickens, eggs, slaughtering the pigs, the smokehouse, the spring house, the wild watercress that grows up through the spring. We would cook like we call them creasy greens.
What was creasy greens?
Creasy greens are like basically the wild watercress and a few other greens that you would harvest. They're very fresh, very beautiful, very vibrant. We would wilt them with a bit of bacon, a bit of onion, a bit of vinegar, much like we would call hot spinach salad. You know that? Hot bacon salad.
Yeah.
That was creasy greens. That started. There was no spinach. We didn't really have that because we would harvest the wild lettuces. So there was a familiarity of sorts. And it's certainly regionality that really resonated with me. That's what I knew. So as I started to go towards, that's actually, it's not cooking that started. It was skateboarding.
Right.
That started everything. So I was an avid skateboarder, and I was blessed to be pretty good, pretty aggressive, pretty wild. And I was chasing my skateboarding dream. I was going to be a professional skateboarder. That was like number one. I am going to do this. And I can remember watching on Nickelodeon in the very early 80s, Skate Master Tate. In this television show, and there was a 30-minute show that come on once a week, and we would all like gather around someone's house who happened to have a television, but not even everyone had television, and watch Nickelodeon Skate Master Tate. And there would be these dudes from California. There would be music, we'd be surfing the bowls and skating the bowls and like all this stuff. And it's like, okay, I'm going to be a skateboarder. I'm going to be a really good skateboarder. And I picked up a skateboard. I meant to bring it actually.
That's right. We talked about
my original. Yeah. I bought a recast model of it, a reproduction, of the first one, but I worked in restaurants, washing dishes, chasing my skateboarding dream. So that's kind of how I started going down that route. And through that, at some point, I realized I'm not going to be a professional skateboarder. And I had traveled the country skateboarding.
Yeah.
Semi-professionally at that point, and really aggressively pursuing that. And I always fell back on the kitchen because when I was in the kitchen, I had to pay, schedule, food, uniform, mentor, whatever it was. But at this point, I was only washing dishes. And
how old are you at this time?
Well, we're kind of spreading this through a few different generations. In the beginning, my culinary awakening was pre 12 years old.
Okay.
About the time I hit 11, 12 years old, my whole world went to shit. It went totally radical. And at this time I was also skateboarding, but it was very infantile in that process. But so as my home life began to get really rocky, really toxic, really scary, I leaned into my skateboarding because I found a brotherhood through skateboarding. And anyone who is a skateboarder will know you can go anywhere at any time. And if you've got a skateboard and you've got a modicum of talent, you can hang with the crew. You're cool. You can just settle right in, much like cooking.
Yeah.
So then a similar thing.
And the girls like skateboarders, right?
And that was always, yeah, of course. Yeah. You know, I had my mohawk and it's funny. We used to dress like cholos.
Yeah.
So I was in East Tennessee.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite bands was Suicidal Tendencies.
Yeah.
And we
were the heavy metal band with cholo dress, right?
Yeah. And we would dress like cholos, and we had like our plaids, and we had our top buttons, and we had like the whole.
Yeah.
We looked like cholos, but we had no clue. It was like a caricature. Like we had no clue what it was.
Yeah. Have you seen
the hats flipped up?
Yeah.
Suicidal on.
Yeah. Have you seen in Japan? I think Japan and Thailand.
Yes,
like
I have.
These cholos that are.
Yeah.
Like, but they just are in it for the lowrider culture.
Yeah.
Not the gang.
They got all the tattoos.
They look just
the
like
wife beaters. Right?
Yeah. Sorry.
No, but that's cool. Yeah, they all have barbershops, right?
Yeah. They all have barbershops.
Yeah.
Virgin Marys on the car.
Totally. My guys, man, they send me these memes all the time and stuff. But I respect those guys. They're cool. I mean, they know who they are, who they want to be, and who they respect.
Yeah.
But so that was kind of that thing. So it's a really wild experience because I'm equal parts Huck Finn, Tom Sawyer.
Mm-hmm.
I could go out, I can hunt, I can fish, I can grow, I can garden, I worked tobacco. I started working tobacco in the fields at 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm out there. My father would take me out. A very complex man, my father. He would take me out, and I know today why. And at 7 years old, my job was to follow the men that would go through the field. And this is not some good job. This is people that work for cash because they're probably have liens on their checks. They have, there's a lot of, they all have substance abuse problems amongst anything you can imagine. Those things are there. And my job was to follow the men through the field. And one of them was to pick up the leaves that fall off the tobacco plants. So this was when I was little, and gather them. Those are dollars. That's worth money. The area that I'm from, the region I'm from, is called the Big Burley Tobacco Region. Mm-hmm. It's a very, at that time in the 80s, was a very important region for growing tobacco. And so I would clear the fields of the leaves, and then my job was to pick up the rocks so that when they come through and till later, the rocks aren't there. I would pile the rocks on the side, and my pay for the day was typically my lunch.
Yeah.
And what my father was teaching me is that you have to work for your dinner. There's no free ride,
no free lunch.
You know what I mean?
No free dinner,
right? I mean, it's a thing. It's a thing. So that was a really good lesson. But as I grew older, I grew stronger. I would have different jobs, and I literally did every single job in a tobacco field: cutting, spudding, hanging, grading, topping the plants, seeding, everything. And we did it all for cash.
So very similar when I was a kid. My dad, when I was 6 years old, my dad had a tremendous work ethic. And I'm a 6-year-old kid. And he said, he bought a popsicle cart, those Mexican paleta carts, right? Mm-hmm. So he says,
paletero.
I was a paletero, right? So he would take me and my brother, and he would drop us off at the flea market, 6 years old. My brother's a little bit older. And he would tell us, I'm not going to pay you. You're going to work all day selling popsicles, but you can eat all the popsicles you want. That's your pay, right? And we're kids, so it's like, yeah, I'll eat all. Like I get whatever I want. And he was teaching us work ethic at 6 years old, right? Because it was like, no son of mine is gonna, be lazy. You need to get work ethic. Like, Dad, I'm only 6 without a work ethic.
Yeah.
You get it now.
Yeah. So I got my bologna sandwich.
Yeah.
I would rather have a paleta, but that's fine. Yeah, equal parts. It was like if you look at it, like it was like bread, equal parts, one slice of bread, one slice of tomato, one slice of bologna, which was mad thick.
Yeah.
Mayo, mad thick.
Yeah.
Another slice of bread. And that's it. And they call it a jam sandwich. You just jam that shit together.
Yeah.
And that was lunch, man. And if I was lucky, I'd get a little bag of barbecue chips, probably Lay's or something like that. I don't remember exactly. Something regional, possibly. Yeah, that was a good start to everything, because then also you're still in the soil.
Yeah.
You're still in the soil. You're still learning the growth process of a plant. And to me, that has paid huge dividends in my career of being one with the plant. And we can get into that later, but being a conduit for Mother Nature, for God, for the product that comes out of the earth. It's very important.
At what point did you go from I'm washing dishes to I want to do this professionally?
Well, I think we have to zoom out a little bit. So my first job washing dishes, I worked at a place called J&E Italian Village. I was probably about 13, and I wasn't legally able to work. However, Joe and Irvina, I can't remember the last name. Joe was a hardcore dude from Czechoslovakia, and they cooked all Italian cuisine, and he was immigrated to the United States and joined the Marine Corps to get a green card. So he was tough as nails, this guy, and who knows what he did in his home country. He was a really tough guy. And his brother Joe also, it was Joe. Joe was the patriarch of the business, and he had a brother who was the pizzaiola.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I can't remember his name. It was something typical. But he made a deal with me that he could pay me $3 an hour because they weren't going to take taxes out of my check.
That's a good deal.
He's like, I
Sign
could
me
pay
up.
you $5, but you have to pay taxes.
Yeah.
But now you don't have to pay taxes, so I'm going to pay you $3.
Yeah.
It worked the totally wrong way.
Yeah.
But of course, I was like, I would skateboard in the back. There was a basketball hoop. They would put me on break as much as possible.
Yeah.
At any time possible. I would clean, I would wash dishes, I would do all these things, and I would go back, smoke pot, ride my skateboard, shoot some hoops. I'd hang out for 3 hours, not getting paid. And they're like, they call me David Capicola. Yeah. And they're like, hey, Capicola, like, get back in here, like meathead, basically, right? And they're like, get back in here, it's time to go. And so I literally worked, I could work an 8-9 hour day, and I make $3 an hour, right? Maybe through all of that, I would earn $9.
Yeah.
And then what did I want to do?
Yeah.
Feed me. So I would just hang out.
Yeah.
I didn't make anything. I would end up paying them to be there. And it was a thing. So I didn't do that very long, but it was a fun experience. I learned a lot. But one thing that was really impactful were these dudes that were on the line and how they interacted with each other. And so I was the dishwasher and they needed the pans. So they would always treat me well. They would always look after me. They would always feed me. They would slip me little tasty goodies and whatnot because they needed the pans. And when they were in the service, it was just powerful. Mm-hmm. And I don't think none of them were professional stuff. I'm certain they were all military, and they were just doing this for money and or to try to build this business. They were all cousins, and they would skip these saute pans down the floor. And I would be on the receiving end. And to this day, I can barely eat marinara sauce because I would be washing these pans and up to water with this red water, garlic, tomato grease up to my elbows, just coating. And oh man, I'll never forget that aroma. And I would smell like it for days. You couldn't chisel it away if you had to. There's not enough Drakkar Noir that would fix that back then.
Yeah. Holy shit.
The aroma.
That's funny. You bring up the low pay. I remember when I was in culinary school, I was working at this place as a baker. And I remember I got my first paycheck, and I don't know what I was making. It was probably like $4 or $5 an hour, something like that. And I remember my paycheck. I had never had a paycheck before because I worked for my dad. He paid me under the table, right? It was cash. Mm-hmm. So it's like my first paycheck. It was like $120 or something like that. And I was like, this is like so badass. And I remember I had to get a bank account, and I felt so cool walking up to the cute teller at the bank and be like, what do you think of that? That's a weird, real $120 right there.
I've got a good story about that too.
Yeah,
actually, yeah. So let's see, where are we at in the grand scheme of things right now? So I have my introduction to my love of food, my love of agriculture, my love of my first little position. At some point in my life, my home life. This is a very important part of my story. It's my home life. So my father it's a trauma bonding, man. It's like my father. So let me zoom out a bit. When I was a baby, my mother was killed in a car accident at around 4 months old. My old man, she was 18 years old. My old man was 19 years old. So I grew up with a dude that was my parent who was not emotionally capable of being a parent. And there were a few reasons why. He had rattled his brains a few times, really, really set him back. He didn't have the ability to be able to process emotions correctly. And a few years later, he was hit by a drunk driver he was on a motorcycle. He was hit by a drunk driver and he lost his leg when I was about 6. This crumbled that man. It really messed him up in many, many, many ways. Obviously, physically, but mentally. And so here's a guy who's 26 years old. He's got a 5-year-old kid. Maybe I was 6 at the time. I'm not sure. Something right around there. And he's trying to pull out of the doldrums trying to get his life on track, and he just keeps getting smashed with life. And he didn't have the ability at that point to pull out of that one. That was the final straw for him, in my opinion. Rattled his brains. The first one really messed him up emotionally, probably because of the loss of my mother. He has a child. He has to raise a child. He's trying to get himself on track. Boom. It was devastating for him. And he gets hooked on opioids. But this is before what we know today as opioids. It was morphine at the time, and then you couldn't get morphine, so then you do heroin, right? So, and then heroin turns into cocaine, turns into crack, turns into all these other things. So he had a very, very big problem with pain management. Started as pain and emotional management. And at that point, 6, 7, 8, this dude is totally off the rails, out of his mind. In the middle of the night, we moved way out into the country, and that's where we moved to the dairy farm. And so it's a very long story, so I don't have to get too much in detail, but we left the safety of my grandmother's home at that point, and that's when everything started to go totally crazy. Through a period, without getting into the minutia, of from 8, 9, 10, there was some hardcore drug addiction depth that I've never seen before, never seen again. That was the darkest times I've ever watched someone go through in my life, with him struggling with himself and his addictions, his vices, he was wild. My father, very much like me, or I should say, I'm very much like my father, very energetic, my father was brilliant. My mother was brilliant. Thank God that I've been blessed with the emotional capability that I have, and the intelligence that I've been blessed with. It's a gift from God. I'm so grateful. So by 10 years old, he had been through prison, through jail. At this time, I'm bouncing around all these different places. I can remember the sheriff's department kicking in my front door, me escaping out the back. They couldn't chase him. He only had one leg, and I ran away. I escaped from the sheriff's department at this point. I went to stay with a friend, dear friend of mine, Greg Strat. Love him and his mother, Rose. This was my life. This was this toxic, caustic, wild life. Okay, so then my dad gets out of, it wasn't prison at this point, it was jail. He served 1129 for that infraction. He got caught up with about 30 people in a huge drug ring. Okay, so now I'm in 10 years old, 11 years old, and we're in this new neighborhood across the county. My county I'm from is massive. He just falls deeper into drug addiction, deeper into depression. And I watched this man. He would drink 40 beers before noon, any given day. He could be totally blacked out, totally drunk, totally just out of this planet, one leg, on drugs, on pills, on this, on that, whatever. And so he was a tortured soul. And I'm not telling you these things because I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm not looking for like this. It's not about that. It's about celebrating my father and this poor man who experienced these things. And through all of the things that he experienced, and my observations of him experiencing them, they set me up to be able to be a successful man. And it was through seeing how deep and dark he went that I was able to be a quote unquote successful, whatever. I've done pretty well in my career. I'm proud of myself. But so then, let's say 10 and 11 years old. So now I'm starting to become a young man, no longer childish. And so then we start partying together. We started doing drugs together. My dad's philosophy was, I want to expose you to all of these things before you will ever be exposed to them from someone else, because I'm going to protect you. I'm going to teach you how to navigate these waters, which is not a good idea.
No.
I would never do that with my children. No way. But so, I can remember a time when, and I'll never forget, MTV, Pantera had done a cover of Black Sabbath's Planet Caravan, one of my favorite songs. It was on the television. My father holds his hand out to me. He says, "Take one." And his hits of acid in the palm of his hand. And I'm like 10 years old. And so here we go. We're going to go on this trip. Totally irresponsible. But that just kind of like, it's an important reason why I'm sharing this. So for me now, 10, 11, 12, 13, I start becoming super wild. And I escaped that environment. I started running away from home. I couldn't be in that environment. My father at that point started going off the rails on crack cocaine. Total hardcore addiction. We lived on welfare. The first of the month, it was just like that Bone Thug song, it's like first of the month. And because everybody's coming around, everybody's smoking, everybody's cooking, everybody's doing all this and that. And it became such a toxic environment. I'm like, I don't want to be in that environment anymore. Even at 13 years old, my friends I ran with a group that was a little older than me. They're getting killed.
Mm-hmm.
They're committing suicide. They're going to prison. And I'm like, this is not good. So I started to branch out. Skateboarding gave me that kind of freedom because I had groups all over in different areas. So I started to escape. Took me a little while. At 14, I left again. Toxic environment. I can't be around this. At this point, I'd been in juvenile detention. I had done all kind of different crazy things. I'm out. I can't deal with this. I'm out. I ran away from home. I turned 15 on a Greyhound bus on the way to Los Angeles in Dallas, Texas. And here I am, freshly minted, 15 years and 1 day old in Dallas, Texas. In Los Angeles. And I can remember looking up at this city because I knew all the skate spots.
Yeah.
And I could skate pretty good. Here I am, this little punk rocker, like whatever. And I like Venice Beach, like I'm kind of like fit in, whatever. And I met a group of kids and we all skated and I spent like 3 months there skating, have a good time. And eventually I couldn't prove who I was. I couldn't, things happen. And eventually I had to go back. And actually my dad came and got me and brought me back. But, which is crazy, but he was wild. He would do that. And I've been gone for 3 months. Of course, I have to go back to juvenile detention. I leave juvenile detention again and basically broke out of juvenile detention. It wasn't like breaking out. It's not like there's bars. It's not sawing through bars and anything, but you can leave. You're not supposed to. And I came to Nashville, Tennessee. And that was my deliverance. I left in the middle of the night. I went to Nashville, Tennessee. There's a little bit of a precursor to that, but we're not going to go into that now. I arrived on Broadway. I made a post about it the other day.
Yeah.
And I arrived on Broadway. There was a Greyhound bus station right behind Broadway. I happened to know a dude that worked at a restaurant called Wolfie's on Broadway. Robert Wiseman, exceptional skateboarder. He was from Chico, California, good friend of mine. And I went to the restaurant where he was working, Wolfie's on Broadway, and I'm like, yo, Bob, what's up? I need a job. I need a house. I need all this. And he's like, shit, they used to call me Crazy Dave. I said, shit, Crazy Dave, let's go. Like, whatever. I've got an opportunity for you. Let me talk to Robert that owns the place, or Bob that owns the place. Bob Wolf was the guy that owned the place. Bob comes around, mountain of a man, huge dude. He used to play drums for Johnny Paycheck. If you ever know any of that old country music. And it was a honky tonk. And Bob says, you need a job? I said, I would love to have the opportunity. Yeah, please. He said, you know how to cook? I'm like, no, but I can wash dishes. I can clean up. I'll show up. I'm responsible. I was respectful enough. I had Southern heritage, I was like respectful. So I said, also, I need a place to stay. And he says, well, you know what? We have a studio upstairs. And I'll take it out of your check. So within 20 minutes of arriving in Nashville, Tennessee, I had a job, I had an apartment, paycheck, I had all the food I wanted to eat, and I was set. And I never turned back. I never turned back. Now, of course, there was a lot of ups, and it took a lot to get, but that's a precursor to, that's the childhood.
Yeah.
The stimulus of my childhood, the lessons I learned that are very good lessons. And I don't look at it. It sounds like it comes off like this, like, woe is me, like negative thing. But for me, they were the greatest stimulus that I could have ever had, because it prevented me from making those mistakes in the future.
Yeah.
You think I ever fell into drug addiction? No way. I was frightened of that. There's no way. And there's no way, because I saw what humanity would do at a very young age. So really, that gave me the desire to find a deeper depth of my profession, and run for it.
Yeah.
But I was still pursuing skateboarding.
Right.
At this point, I was a really good skateboarder.
Jeff, it's a wild story. It's wild that you've gone through that, and despite and overcome and gotten to the places that you've gotten to. It's powerful, because a lot of chefs out there share similar stories.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
Some of them don't make it to where you've made it. Some of them get stuck in the mud.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Look at Curtis.
Yeah.
Curtis Duffy.
Yeah.
That story, bro, I've got so much respect for him. I don't even know him.
Yeah.
But that story is powerful.
Powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed. He just wrote a book. I need to read it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I can't remember the name of his book. I should give it a shout out on the show, but I don't remember the name of it.
Drop it in the notes.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll drop it in the show notes. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's a G too.
He is. Yeah.
And that's some stimulus. You talk about some stimulus?
Yeah.
So, so my whole life, I've always felt like, I have my perspective, I have my things or whatever. My father was very, I don't want to interrupt you. I'll call it.
No, go ahead.
But there's an important thing here, is that my dad would never allow himself to be called disabled. He would not. He was
that mindset.
Yeah. Somebody else has got it worse. And I've lived my life that way, because I know that there's kids out there that experience worse. I know that they do daily. I know that so many different types of abuse that are just horrific that people experience. But I think Kurt's experience is powerful. But my experience allowed me to be able to move forward in a different way. So I try to look back at everything that I experienced, even to this day, as a positive. I always try to find the positive silver lining, no matter how difficult it may seem now, as we struggle through these things, or experience them or celebrate them. What did Frank Sinatra say? Flying high in April and shot down in May. Yeah. That's life.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to keep yourself,
Yeah.
You never know. Grim Reaper's on your tail, man,
Yeah.
But it all set me up to be able to be what I was able to do.
Yeah.
And later I'll tell you about a very important story that changed my life.
Well, let's get right into it.
Okay. Well, so here I am in Nashville, Tennessee, running around doing my thing, and I was just woefully unprepared to do that. First thing I do is get a huge tattoo on my neck. I get tattoos all over my body. I need to look like I'm scary and tough, and like you don't fuck with me, like this is like I'm dangerous, because I was a child.
Right.
I need to project, put on a facade, and it worked.
Yeah.
Enough. I was also pretty wild, so it helped. I wasn't scared to get into anything. I would do anything, anytime. Never hurt anyone. Like in my life, I never like stole from people. I never like hurt people. Never. My father really is complex of a man as he was. He had a great set of morals and ethics. And it was about protecting your fellow man, about protecting someone who can't protect themselves. It was more of a protector mindset than it was, or a defensive mindset than it was in a predatory mindset. And he was a beautiful man for that. I'm so blessed that he taught me that at a young age. And of course, in rural Appalachia, we have a very biblical kind of approach to things, right?
Yeah.
And you have to like live by the Ten Commandments and the Golden Rule. But anyhow, so I traveled around a little bit. I was in Nashville, I was in Miami, and then I went to Knoxville. And Knoxville is kind of where I had my awakening for culinary. And
How old are you at this time when you get to Knoxville?
17.
17.
Yeah. My first day in Knoxville, I remember I met up with these guys at the skate shop.
Yeah.
We went over to Fort Sanders. We were skating around. I go into this house with these guys. Like I said, I didn't do drugs. I don't smoke pot. None of that. That's not my thing. And they're like, hey, sit there. This guy's going to come over and just, you sit there. And I'm like, what's going on? And so apparently this guy had robbed these guys a couple of days before.
Uh-huh.
And this dude comes through the front door, and this guy's hiding behind the door with a baseball bat. The guy walks towards me in the house. I have no clue why. I'm a child. I'm literally a child. And the dude behind the door comes out and smashed the guy in the head with a baseball bat. Like, ding. Like, here's Knoxville. Welcome to Knoxville. So, okay. What do I do? I don't know who any of these guys are. I run out the back door. Get me away from these people. Like, I don't want to be around this. So this is day one in Knoxville. I'll never forget that. Day one. That was what I told myself. Oh my God. Day one. Marble City, baby. Here we go.
Yeah.
So I knew that wasn't the crew to hang out with immediately. So I started really embedding myself in my profession. That was really a big catalyst for that, because I cannot continue down this road with these punk rockers, the skateboarders, these kind of miscreants. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I tried to escape from.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, look, day one, already we're here. This is not the life I'm going to live. I'm going to be a professional chef. That was it. And I had happened to be able to get a position at a place called Chesapeake's. And it was a Maryland-style seafood restaurant owned by a gentleman named Mike Chase. And it was awesome. It was great. It was not a chef restaurant,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a restaurant that served tons of fresh seafood, cooked a la minute, and done well with recipes. And I loved it. I learned a lot from that group. It was called the Copper Cellar Group.
Still around?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time I go to Knoxville, I go to Chesapeake's.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little reminisce. So it wasn't somewhere that you would retire at for me at that time with my aspirations, because at the same time, working at Copper Cellar Group, I met a dude named Chris Rainwater who was like, you have to read the Escoffier cookbook.
Mm-hmm. Le Guide.
Le Guide. Yeah, Le Guide Culinaire.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think his southern accent would allow him to
Le
say
Guide.
that. Le Guide.
Yeah.
But so I bought it. And I bought it at Barnes & Noble's.
Mm-hmm.
And my girlfriend at the time actually took me to Barnes & Noble's, and I was like, they have cookbooks? They're like, she's like, yeah, of course they have a huge cookbook section.
Hmm.
And for me, being from where I'm from, a cookbook store is like a bookstore where I'm from in Greene County is like an antique store at that time.
Yeah.
And so you go in and you buy old Aesop's Tales or something, there's, old books. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see what they have. It didn't resonate what the potential was. And I remember walking into Barnes & Noble's, and there was this little stand that had the discount books. Yeah. I was like, wow. And she's like, dude, you have no idea. Look over there. And there was like 4 walls of cookbooks.
Yeah.
There was free coffee. There was
free coffee.
Couple Lazy Boys.
Old days of
the
Barnes & Noble.
old days.
Holy
Couple
shit,
Lazy
yeah.
Boys. Some
Yeah.
end tables. And I was like, you mean I can read any of these books? She's like, yeah. And she was a poet. She was always in a bookstore. She said, yeah, go read. So that was like started this thing. And Chris told me about the Ligue Culinaire, and I'm like, okay, wow. This is incredible. So I started studying cuisine. So Chris is also the person who told me about a restaurant called Club LeConte. Mm-hmm. Club LeConte was on the 27th floor of the First Tennessee Bank building downtown on Gay Street. And the whole top floor was a private dining club. And it was the creme de la creme. Like, if you want to be a chef,
Mm-hmm.
there's
only one place to work.
That's where you work.
Yeah.
And so I had put in a application. A resume wasn't even I couldn't even figure that out at that point. I put in an application, and my application got put in with the dining room teams. So I didn't hear anything for like 3 months. And at this time I was working one restaurant at lunch, one restaurant at dinner. I was working double. So I had tons of cash. I was stacking cash, tons of cash. I was able to do whatever I wanted to do. And I had burned out all my opportunities, not through poor relationship management, but for desire to be in those establishments at that point in Knoxville. And I was like, I don't want to be anywhere else. I'm done. I'm going to join the Navy. I'm going to get a GI Bill and I'm going to go to culinary school. So I started to pursue that. A few days later, after I started that, well, maybe a week, 2 weeks later, after I started that process, a gentleman named Seth Zimmerman, who was the executive chef, called me. And he says, hey, I'm just reaching out to see if you're still interested in joining the team. Your application was accidentally put with the dining room teams, but I do have an opportunity if you want to come in and interview. And I said, Chef, I'm very grateful for your call, but I'm going to join the United States Navy today. And he says, what are you going to do in the Navy? And I said, I'm going to be a chef. And he says, okay, you may want to come talk to me. I was a chef on a submarine in Vietnam. They're out patrolling around.
Yeah.
And he says, you may want to talk to me first. Let's just have a chat. And this was like a gentleman speaking to a young man.
Sure.
Like he probably didn't care if I joined the team or not. He's like, probably wants to just try to drop some wisdom. So I said, well, you know what, Chef? Absolutely, I will. So I went to the recruiter and I said, sir, I may have an opportunity that I'm going to consider.
Mm-hmm.
And if it goes nowhere, because I had an appointment to complete my paperwork, I will be right back. And the guy looks at me and he says, sir, the United States Navy is not your second choice. It cannot be your second choice. And I said, okay, well, look, I'm going to go speak with this gentleman. And he reached out to me and I put my hand out to shake his hand. And he refused to shake my hand. And I'm like, it's very telling.
You're right.
At that point too, I was a hard ass. Like I'm not like him. He's a grown man, but I'm saying like I was tough nuts. Like I'm not taking nothing from anybody. So I'm like, this is very telling of the sad future of me getting beaten for years.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I was like, probably a good thing.
Your life flashed before your eyes.
Yeah.
Like, this is what the next few years look like.
It revealed itself.
Yeah.
Like it revealed itself. I'm not doing this. And so when I went and met Seth, it was probably the greatest moment in my life at that point.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, for sure, because I had found a mentor and I had found a person who would care for me like my own father. And I spoke with you about this with the check pants the other day.
Yeah,
and that was like I literally started crying on the phone. So I go and meet Seth, and Seth says, "Okay, this and that." And he looked me up and down, and I'm like this shave head, little like white t-shirt, tight blue jeans, like just little punk rocker, like. And he's like, "Come on, like I'm gonna whip you into shape." I know he's sizing me up. And I'm like, he says, well, so do you know how to cook? And it's the first time in my life I said, no, I do not, chef. I'm familiar with some things, but I'm eager to learn. And he's like, okay, good. He said, I called all your references. You're not eligible for rehire at any of them. However, many of them said that you're a good kid and they would rehire you if they could. And the dude took me in. And that was the spark. Seth Zimmerman, my number one mentor. I wrote about him in our recent book, Thomas and I, was the French Laundry Per Se book.
Okay.
The Chauffois Trout. I learned that I learned a lot of things that I do today. I learned from Seth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I continue to perpetuate those dishes.
He's still around?
Yeah.
He's still around. Yeah.
Good dude. Tough as nails.
Is he still the chef of that place?
No. He retired a long time ago. He was 55 when I was 17.
Okay. Yeah.
So he's chilling.
Yeah. Good for him. Good for him.
By the pool.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a good guy. And I'll share the story that I mentioned to you. We spoke about check pattern the other day.
Yeah.
And for me, every time I see the check pattern, the houndstooth pattern, the black and white houndstooth. And of course, Thomas has that line of china that I just love.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so beautiful to see. Every time I see it, women love to wear it today. It's scarves or the blouse or the whatever. And every time I see it, it just warms my heart. And only in the conversation with you did I realize why.
Yeah.
You know, because we were talking about the nostalgia of it and whatever. And I said, why do we like that? And I said, it transports us to that time in our lives when we were kind of vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When we're the kids, we got our little kerchief.
The world is in front of us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The call to adventure.
For sure. Call to adventure.
Right.
Yeah. It was our, for chefs, it's your multicam when you join the Rangers, right? It's like,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there's sometimes there's a page on Instagram. I think it's don't eat before reading this or something like.
Love that.
I love it because they're always showing
Marco
old
stuff.
videos.
Yeah,
I love it. Because I want nothing more than to just be a saucier in that kitchen.
Yeah.
You know, with a baggy chef coat, check pants, and a white apron that's like flimsy.
Yeah.
And just be skimming stock or roasting bones or whatever.
Yeah.
And just those smells.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just something about those kitchens that I feel like, I don't know. I know kitchens are still kitchens, but there was a feeling in those days in the kitchen.
Yeah.
There was just something special about it.
Yeah. Pride and belonging. I mean, those guys literally kill for their positions.
Yeah.
I mean, they earn those positions.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything. I don't want to do that. I'm sorry. The chefs today are rightfully where they are. The young chef, I'm speaking of the younger chefs. The apprentices, the chef de parties, the commis are rightfully where they are, and they deserve everything that they have. Mm-hmm. In that other area, I don't want to be that old guy that says uphill both ways in the snow, barefoot.
Right.
But it was a different thing because we had a different set of resources to learn from.
Yeah.
And
we talked about this at length.
Yeah.
You were talking about Barnes and Noble earlier, and I remember so much of my life before Google.
Uh-huh.
And even during the Google time, right?
Yeah.
It was day off. What am I going to do? I'm going to go to Barnes & Noble. I'm going to pick up a stack of books. I'm going to sit on the couch. And I'm going to sit there and read because I could probably only afford to buy one book. So I'm going to read 10 of them.
Yeah.
And pick the one that I'm going to buy.
The one that's most compelling.
Right.
Yeah.
So
take
much
notes.
Yeah. And take notes and like, okay, this one's good, but geez, which one do I get? Is the new Trotter book or is it right?
Yeah. I literally went in debt.
Yeah.
I mean, Charlie Trotter put my ass in debt.
Yeah,
my friend. That was it. I'll share a book with you that was really impactful for me. It helped. It gave me everything. Karen Page, Andrew Dornberg, Becoming a Chef.
That's right. I have that book. Yeah, it's a great book.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I think it came out in 1996. It was one of the first ones that I got, along with my Scaffier, my
Food Lover's Companion.
Irma, a Food Lover's Companion. It was Dornberg. Irma. Shit, I can't remember. But Food Lover's Companion was great.
Yeah.
Great. Of course, Julia.
Yeah.
Jacques. Right.
The technique.
Mm-hmm. La méthode, la technique. Yeah.
Yeah.
I buy it every time I find one. I buy it.
Yeah.
And I give it away. I give so many books away, the ones that are important to me. But that book, sorry, I'm a storyteller, man. So we're going to get out there.
No, go for it.
But so Becoming a Chef was so powerful in my career because it told me exactly what my forefathers did to achieve their goals.
Mm.
And I never knew. How is some hillbilly redneck from East Tennessee going to know what a stage is? That you can show up and do professional internship on your own accord. Like, I don't know that. I don't know anything about that. I never worked in other professions. I mean, I roofed some houses. I cut some tobacco. I did a little this and that. Like, I don't know. But so what that book did is it laid out what probably in the 90s were the 20 most prominent chefs, the Jeremiah Towers, the Wally Maloufs, I apologize. I can't really pull them out of my head right now, but I should have read it before I came. I didn't even think about talking about that. But what it said was most of these guys would show up at Bocuse.
Uh-huh.
Hello, sir. I would love to observe service today. Or may I stage? Or whatever it is. Here's a letter of recommendation from my previous chef.
Right.
But I didn't have that. But what it said to me was, show up. Application will get you there. Apply yourself. So I started showing up. So after I had my Club Lacan experience, I was fortunate to get that experience. I worked out a deal with Seth Zimmerman to where he would pick me up every day. I lived way out in Westtown, Knoxville by design to stay away from my peer group.
Yeah, the
Potential
riff-raff.
peer group.
Yeah.
The riff.
Yeah.
And I lived way out in West Knoxville. My lovely girlfriend, Glennis Appleton, she was incredible. She really was a powerful part in empowering me to be able to achieve what I achieved. She was an incredible woman. She helped me a lot. She's a great person, great human being. The poet. So she's very thoughtful. I went from Westtown. I organized with Seth, who lived on the other side of Westtown in a town called Farragut. Will you pick me up at 8:30 in the morning? Or pick me up in the morning. It happened to be that it was 8:30 that he would come through. He agreed, I'll pick you up at 8:30. I'm going to work from 8:30 till 2:30 for free. Every single day. I clock in at 2:30. I'm going to work my station, the grill station. So from 8:30 a.m., or maybe we arrive at 9, from 9 till 2:30, I was like spec ops. I'd do anything that needed to be done. I'm an extra hand, hired hit. Like, boom. I learned so much. Chef would bring me books. He would challenge me to make specials. He would challenge me to, we're carving ice for the buffets. We're doing these huge chaud-froid salmons. We're doing for that restaurant had 7 dining rooms. One of which was a la carte, one of which was a bar. And then you would have a omelet or primary station or action station here. Yeah. You would have a choice of entrees here, 3-course menu. This one would have a salad buffet and maybe a couple hot buffets with an entree that would come. It was just like,
it's a classy buffet. The salmon Kubiak over here at Beef Wellington.
Yeah. So it's all popping.
Yeah.
But so after 1 year, I had 2 years of experience. Plus, I applied myself. I would sit at home and tornado potatoes so I could get the dexterity. I'm going to figure out how to do this. I can do this. I was Julian. I would do this because I knew eventually I had to be able to match up with people that went to culinary school.
Right.
But I was a teenage runaway, high school dropout. I'm never going to be able to go to culinary school in my mind. In my mind. So in practice, I became sick.
So you're buying like a sack of potatoes at home, cornet, bird's beak, I'm assuming.
Yeah. No, Seth would give me the potatoes and I would bring them back to work.
Oh,
it's like the old stories of the guys at Ramsey's Royal Hospital Road splitting peas at the house.
Yeah.
There's French Laundry stories about that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
Not my generation, but previous generations. But my generation really spans a lot, 20 years. But not my generation. We didn't do that. However, Thomas gave us great resources, so I'm blessed for that. But so at some point, I had amassed this experience and level, and Seth had realized that I had kind of grown to the point that I need my next position. And I didn't know he's thinking this. We didn't talk about this or whatever. He says, how you think about Charleston? Chef, I'd love to go to Charleston. I'm going to take you to Johnson & Wales. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to introduce you to my friend. He's got a restaurant. So this dude took me, probably a pretty impactful member of his kitchen. I was not in any position to manage anyone. I was young and wild. I could not be a sous chef. I could not be responsible for anyone. I had too much ego, too much energy, like just not even. However, I had desire. He brought me to Charleston, took me to his friend Frank Chisera's restaurant. It was called the Harbor Club. Impeccable, beautiful restaurant. We introduced. He said, here's David. He has a very hard head and a very strong back. I remember those words.
Yeah.
A very hard head and a very strong back, which means you got to beat the hell out of me and I can work hard.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's one thing I've always been good at. I can work my ass off. This comes from the tobacco fields.
Yeah.
And skateboarding too. Thousands of repetitions. And then he took me and introduced me to the dean at Johnson & Wales. And I was able to get into a summer program, at least to have the confidence to be able to do what I'm able to do. And Johnson & Wales was a really good thing for me. And I never in my lifetime thought that I would ever be able to go to college. And they provided that opportunity for me. They opened that door for me. I was able to get in on a very affordable path, because it was not a necessary degree path. It was a orientation type path. I had already kind of surpassed a lot of that with my studies. I was so studious. Not to say I was better than anyone there. I don't mean it like that. I mean that just orientation of understanding, right? What do you go to culinary school for? General orientation,
Right.
of things. And then when you have the upper degrees, those are very important for business management. So here I am in Charleston, South Carolina. Incredible. A new cuisine, low country cuisine. I had no idea. They're all Southern. We all speak with the same twang. We all have the kind of same thing. I'm a mountain boy. They're low country, but the food's different.
Yeah.
And I just went again, that same loop of this consumption of this incredible cuisine, this incredible culture. Had some very good mentors. I did that for a while. With Frank, I was at Charleston Grill under a gentleman named Bob Wagoner, who was the only, at the time, I don't know about past, since chef in France, American chef in France to achieve 2 Michelin stars.
Whoa.
Le Monte Cristo. Bob Wagoner is brilliant. One of the best French chefs you'll ever meet in your life. You probably never heard of him. He's amazing. He runs a little cooking school now. Just so charismatic. Incredible. He's from California, actually. Ended up in Charleston somehow, I'm not sure, at the Charleston Grill and the Charleston Place Hotel, which is a brilliant old property. But then I met a gentleman named Michael Kramer. And Kramer was the second mentor. Kramer was amazing. Michael Kramer, we used to call the California Kid. He was probably 27 years old, redheaded Jewish kid from Pacific Palisades, California. He could not have been any different than most of us, which was the best thing that we ever needed, because we're all these little Southern thing. And here comes this gentleman who had incredible experience, incredible vigor. He would ride 30 miles on his bicycle every day for breakfast. The dude was the most energetic person I ever met. And he cooked exactly the same way. And his cuisine was very Californian. He came from the camps of Spago back early 90s. Like, when Lee was young and Wolf was in the kitchen and they were pounding. And that's a great, Jason Nibb was on that team. There's a lot of those. That camp.
Yeah, when Spago was the tip of the spear.
Dude, they were good.
Yeah.
Really good. And then he went to Mansion on Turtle Creek, and then he came to Charleston and partnered with Piggly Wiggly. McCrady's was originally owned by Piggly Wiggly. And of course, McCrady's is the name in our profession. Sean Brock was very big in bringing that up, but I was a generation before Sean Brock. Kramer taught me how to cook on demand. Season perfectly on demand. And in my lifetime, he's the only chef that I ever had at that point. If it wasn't seasoned right, you're getting it back. Right back through the window. Not in a rude way, not throwing food, but just like, no, I am not serving this. Never in my life had I experienced that. Seth was very particular, but it was more of a business model. We produce this, we serve this. It can't be too salty, it can't be unseasoned. It just needs to be this. But
There's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
You can't get too caught up.
Yeah.
Right.
But Kramer was like, the dude was like with his little spoons. He always has little spoons. And always, every soup, we make soup a la minute. All the soup was made a la minute.
Yeah.
I worked a hot app station. I worked all the stations eventually, but it was great. It was a really great experience. Kramer became the greatest mentors that I had ever had at that point. And until Thomas, I mean, in my lineage of mentors, there's my father in the tobacco field, Seth Zimmerman in the kitchen, Michael Kramer in the kitchen for a very different reason, and then Thomas Keller in the kitchen for a very different reason. Seth was a culinary instructor. Michael was a cooking teacher. I'm going to teach you how to bust this out, crush this perfectly. And then Thomas was a philosophical teacher. Then the three of them offered very different things that didn't really overlap.
From McCrady's, do you go to TFL?
Well, no, there's one more sojourn, if you will. I was fortunate. I had a very, very dear friend named Stephen Green, who is currently still an incredible chef. He's actually friends with Curtis. He's at the Umstead. Very talented chef. Very, very, very artistic, articulate, very talented Southern boy. Good guy. So he was a saucier when I was the hot apps guy at McCrady's, and he actually went to a restaurant called the Woodlands. And the Woodlands was ran by a gentleman named Ken Vedrensky, who was very accomplished globally. And he had worked in hotels throughout the world. And that restaurant was kind of the unicorn, if you will. And at some point, Stephen reached out to me and he says, "Hey, we need an AM sous chef. I think that you'd be a great fit." And it was a total blessing. I'm so grateful for him for that. And he invited me up, and I interviewed, and I took the position, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot there, because that was the first restaurant that I'd worked in my life that maybe would only serve 15 covers. And we had a tasting menu, we had a la carte menu, we had a prefix menu, like all these different things. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. It was in a hotel, 5 stars, mobile, Relais Chateau, Relais Gourmand. Ken didn't drink. You weren't allowed to smoke. You weren't allowed to drink caffeine, because it would numb your palate. There were like these kind of rules that were about the food, and Ken was like so enthusiastic about food. He was a wild dude, good guy. But when you would talk about food, you would watch him turn into a child. Like, just, he loved flavor, loved food, to recount these things in his life. So I took the sous chef position there, and probably about 4 weeks later, my father was killed. So then I already had my, there was some issues there.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, I mentioned the thing about my mother that was very impactful. It's turned my father into this maniac. I ran away from home. I never reconciled with my father. I never ever had a conversation with him in my life that discussed any of the things that we went through together. And all of a sudden he's dead. And I get a knock on the door in the middle of the night. My aunt and uncle are outside my apartment. I lived on King Street, and they're buzzing, trying to get up to my house. And I'm like, hello. This was not uncommon, because it was like, the place was like Mardi Gras all the time. Hello? Hey, Anthony, let us up. This is Ange. It's John and Ange. Wow. My family calls me Anthony, by the way. My name is David Anthony. And I go downstairs to let him in, and I just knew, because of my family and the way we are, I just knew my Uncle John had killed somebody. And I was here to hide him, And my aunt's crying like a baby. My uncle's crying like a baby. And I'm like, who did you kill? First words out of my mouth, who did you kill? What are we doing here? Like, let's chop it up. What are we doing? I'm ready to hide him, drive him out of the country. I don't know. And my aunt looks at me. She said, "No, Anthony, it's your daddy. He's been killed." Ooh. Oh. It crushed my soul, because I'd always been prepared to reconcile with him at some point. And I wasn't able to do so. So that was pretty devastating for me at that point. The most devastating thing I had ever experienced. Close. It was pretty bad. And I went into shock. And so then the next couple weeks, they just went by really, really crazy. And I had to leave the restaurant, and I didn't know what was going on with my life. And I went back to Tennessee in the mountains, and I can just remember the day that I'm at my father's funeral, and all these people. I hadn't been home in forever. It had been a very long time. I don't know who anyone is. And these people are coming through the procession. Hello, paying respects, whatever. My father was loved by everyone. And this gentleman walks up to me. He says, I bet you don't know who I am, do you? And secretly, I'm like, I don't know who the fuck any of you are. And he goes, I'm your granddad. And today's your mother's birthday.
Go ahead.
So I'm standing there in the procession, and I don't know who anyone is really, and it's been such a long time since I've been home. And this guy comes by, no clue who he is. He says, I bet you don't know who I am, do you? And I'm like, no. And he goes, I'm your granddad, and today is your mother's birthday. And I had no clue.
Wow.
Bro. Like heavy emotional stuff. So I just like crumbled, crying like a baby. I was already like had a couple of Valiums, maybe drank a couple of beers or something, just to not to get like messed up or whatever. Just like I was like an anxiety mess. So I never knew my mother's family.
Mm-hmm.
I never knew my mother's birthday was. So I buried my father on my mother's birthday.
Wow.
I met my grandfather at, one of my grandfathers, not the gentleman that I called my grandfather,
Right.
her father. So it was a lot of emotion. Here I am. I'm 22, 23 years old, pursuing my career. I'm a sous chef at a 5-star restaurant. Like, here you go. I'm still 23 years old.
Yeah.
We've talked for an hour and a half about all this stuff. I'm like a child. I'm still a child. Your brain's not developed till you're 26 years old, right? I'm still, my prefrontal cortex is still spongy at this point. And so I was just an emotional wreck, and I didn't know what to do. And at this point I was earning, I think, to like $28,000 a year to work 75 or 80 hours a week and just carry the load for the name of haute cuisine and whatever. And, that passes. I go home. 4 or 5 weeks later, my uncle calls me and he says, my Uncle John, he says, hey, apparently your dad had a life insurance policy. And I'm surprised, for sure. And so there's going to be a payout, and I need your address. I need to make sure that we have all these details correct. What's your social? What's your this? What's your that? All this stuff has to match up. And so apparently my dad, at some point, through smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, drinking 50 beers a day, doing God knows how many illicit drugs a day, found through his little bit of welfare money that he had to take out a life insurance policy. And I bless the heavens for whoever it was that introduced that to him. It had to have been by chance. He goes to cash a check at the bank or something, and the teller says, hey, by the way, ... There's no way I don't know what happened. I don't know how he did it, but I think there's something really serendipitous kind of thing to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a check for $100,000 at 23 years old. I was about $30,000 in debt. I had, my college thing. I hadn't paid for that. I went default on every loan I had in my life. I didn't have any ability to do it, but I was always like kind of rushing towards what's the next step, because I know eventually I'm going to be able to pay it. I paid every debt I had, and I had gotten through the grapevine a phone number for a woman who was renting a room in Yountville, California, named Susan Wickers. And so I rented a room from Susan. And even without having a job at French Laundry, I had rented the room. I had the capital to do so. And I'm like, do you have any contacts at the French Laundry?
Yeah.
Because I already had the room.
So what year is this?
2004.
2004. So this is the French Laundry cookbooks come out.
Yeah.
Maybe Bouchon is ish.
Yeah. Per se was opening Per se opened at that time, around that time.
World's 50 best #1 restaurant ish.
2 years in a row.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they nailed that. Yeah, that's the era.
Yeah.
And that's when
you're there. Right there. That's when you arrive.
But I didn't get in yet.
Oh.
So I had to get a phone number to beg for a position. And basically what I did was much like the Becoming a Chef book had told me to do. Apply yourself, show up, knock on the door. That's basically what I did. I was actually introduced through Susan to Devin Nell, who's the culinary Jedi.
Yeah.
You know, not everyone knows Devin, but the people who know Devin love Devin. He's the best. Right. And he hired me, you know, but it was later. He allowed me, Thomas hired me, but Devin allowed me the opportunity to stage. So I finagled my way around this and that. I stayed with Susan. I was able to get to the French Laundry.
What is day one French Laundry for you when you walk in? What was that like?
That is a
because I'm assuming you've read the book.
Yeah.
You know the legend.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You're walking
every book, every article.
Yeah.
You know, Soul of a Chef. You know what? All the stories. You know everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'd heard all the folklore. Yeah.
You're walking into the Mecca,
bro.
Day one.
Incredible. So one thing. The building is the historic building itself, built in 1893, stone that came from the Napa River, mortar that's from the sand below your feet. Brilliant, beautiful, perfectly imperfect. So it's special. At that point, they had built the kitchen onto the back. The original kitchen, when Don and Sally Schmidt ran it, was in the actual building. You must read 6 California Kitchens.
Okay.
That give you a good prequel. It's like the Star Wars thing. It's a prequel to Thomas's generation of the restaurant. And then there'll be another one later at some point. But the copper door, you walk in the back door, it's copper.
Yeah.
It's got a window and you open it. And I can remember the veal stock was on the stove. And the way that we would run the extraction was very low, only high when it needed to be. So you didn't hear this industrial sound. Mm-hmm. And that sets the tone for everything. So the aroma of this beautiful veal stock with these fresh carrots and onions that had just been put into it, and just this sweet smell, subtle, calm, wooden windows.
Yeah.
Carpets on the floor, professional stations, you know, all the equipment's on curbs. There's no casters. There's no feet, no stinky mop strings wrapped around things, you know.
Right.
It was truly a professional kitchen with a residential feel.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible. But I had also dined there before that. Mm-hmm. August the 6th, excuse me. August the 4th is another important date for me. August the 6th, 2004, I dined there. So I knew at that moment, this is where I'm going. Let me tell you about that.
Tell me.
I had lunch. I was able to finagle lunch somehow.
Who you eating with? By yourself?
No, with my girlfriend, Hunter Emerson Holmes. Incredible person. She's great. She was a Charlestonian, and her family has deep roots in Edgefield, South Carolina. She's an amazing person.
So you're 23-ish.
Yeah, 2 days before my 24th birthday.
Okay.
Yeah. August 8th is my birthday. So I was with Hunter, and we were there deciding if we wanted to move, see what we're going to do, whatever. It was going to be a really cool thing for us. It was a lot of great energy.
Yeah.
You know, I had some capital to work with for the first time in my life, so I can make decisions. But after the meal was good. It wasn't revelatory. It was a great meal. Exceptional food, exceptional service, great wine. What made it for me was I was like, can I please see the kitchen? And there's a gentleman named Kevin McAway.
Yeah.
Who's famous. Kevin's famous. Who took me down to the kitchen. He was my captain. And Thomas is there in between lunch and dinner services. And that dude is cutting Romano beans on the pass. And I can tell he's a little flustered. Not busy. He's a little perturbed, I should say, not flustered, perturbed. He's banging somebody's mise en place out because they can't to get it done. Because I'm certain at that point he was the accountant.
Yeah.
He was the human resources. He's greeting the guests. He's taking the guests for a walk through the garden. I mean,
He's cutting beans.
The dude, the dude's got 30 hats, right?
Yeah.
And he's over here cutting Romano beans. But I just remember that. And Grant has a very similar story about that.
Yeah.
With him sweeping the floor.
Yeah.
I'm here to see the chef. I am the chef. You're like, why are you sweeping the floor? Because I'm the chef.
Yeah.
Which is a very good lesson. And Thomas teaches those kind of lessons, right? But and I'll just never forget that, him cutting those Romano beans. And he took the time and he laid his knife down. And you know what he says to me? How was lunch, chef? And I said, it was beautiful. Thank you so much. He said, I hear that you may come work with us soon. I'm working on it. That's what I said. And I was like so shy and so, I was a kid, and I went about my way. I didn't want to keep him, but he was a G, total G, man, like.
I had met him roughly maybe the year before.
Yeah.
And I sent very similar experience. I ate dinner there. I'll maybe in the show, I'll put up a photo of me standing in my suit in front of the sign, the French Laundry.
Was it Granddad's suit?
Yeah, it was way too big, right?
Mine too.
We go and we eat. And we had talked to Thomas before dinner, and then he said, I'll come and eat. And then I was with a bunch of chefs. And then afterwards, we came into the kitchen, kind of like where the service station is right there.
Yeah.
And, we're all chefs. There's like 5 of us there. And he comes up. It's like, how was dinner? Great, chef. Like, we didn't have anything. It's like, it's awkward silence. We got nothing to say. It's like, oh, what do we say to the chef? Yeah, it's great. Great experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my prequel to starting.
Yeah.
So I already had been, what do you say? Proverbially roofied.
Yeah.
I was in love at that point. Like, I'm like, this is my thing. Like, this is it, man. I love this. But so the aromas were one thing. And I remember that. I'll never forget that, like that aroma of that stock just simmering, just beautiful. And we would take the pig's heads and tie them on the handle, and we would braise the pig's head into stock that reduced overnight.
Yeah.
Or, that was like it's like, of course.
For the gelatin, you'd braise the pig head in the veal stock
that's cooking overnight. Yeah.
Okay.
Just these things, but it was like, no, because you have this thing that's cooking.
Yeah.
It was also rudimentary.
Yeah.
It was also rudimentary. It was beautiful cookery. It was this classic cookery.
Yeah.
You have this stock simmering. You don't need to turn the oven on. We would tie the torchon.
Yeah.
Put it in, let it simmer overnight, bring it the next morning, retorque it.
Yeah.
Chill it, but there's a lot of those little things, but that's a romance of cookery, right?
Yeah.
So that, to me, that's what I love. I love that. But so that day, I apologize. I Southern boy, I'm going to get out on I'll start talking too much. So that day we go around. And so my job that day was to be the commis of the poissonnier. And I was going to be the commis of the poissonnier for the next 3 months. That was my commitment to the restaurant. And I go in, and my job is to make the Pommes Maxims, which is like not easy.
For people that don't know, can you explain the process of what that is so they know how not easy it is?
Yeah. Well, today is very different than then. And there's been many iterations over the years. And that's what I love about cooking, is the evolution and the genesis and what era, how did we do it then? And El Bulli does a lot of that. If you look in their old books, version, 2002,
right.
And it's like, that one is that one. But so that era, it was probably the most difficult era to make them, and not my favorite. From a flavor perspective, but visually it was striking. What we would do was we would take Kennebec potatoes and slice them on a machine slicer, punch them with a 50 millimeter punch, and I believe there were probably about 15 punches per. So on a full size Silpat, you could probably get 5, maybe 6, probably 5 if I think about it. Per. We need 60. Arduous process, man. Just impossible. And I'd never made them. So then you would take them, the raw punches, which are oxidizing rapidly, and you would brush the silpats with clarified butter. And it talks about this in the book, but it's done differently in the book, the original book. The Under Pressure book has a great Pommes Maxim, and then there's an image of the current Pommes Maxim in the TFL Per Se book. That is the one. That's the one. It took 20 years for me to work on it, from my day one.
Yeah.
It was a long time.
Still mastering it. Right?
Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. It takes some time. And you would methodically lay out the potatoes, and then you would brush the top layer. So you would brush the silpat, season the silpat, brush the top silpat, season the silpat, and then you would lay them out and you would sandwich it and then slow bake them. But we didn't have convection ovens. We did not have rationales. Those tools didn't exist for us then. We're cooking in still ovens. Everything was cooked in still ovens, which, as you know, is a challenge.
Yeah.
I'd rather simmer on top, know, put a diffuser under it, simmer on top. I mean, the still oven is just not good. So it probably took me 5 hours.
If you needed 60, how many would you make? Ooh, I'm sure you lost a percentage. Right?
Yeah, because I had to figure out that they're burning around the sides, and then once they set, you have to flip them, and you have to it took me a while to figure out, just flip the whole silpat, or rotate the pan, and it was a thing. I had no clue because I'd never cooked something like that in my life, so I probably made 180, and it didn't matter. Just make that perfectly. This is the expectation. And I remember a dear friend of mine to this day, jiu-jitsu guy, good dude, Walter Abrams, Colombian dude from South Florida, just tough as nails, good guy. He is the chef de partie on the Pommes station, and I had barely made enough. I don't even know they're ordering for overages. I don't know. I have no clue what's happening at this point. And he comes in and he grabs one. He snaps it in half. And he eats it. And he's like, we need to work on this. And it was like, I'm like, God, I don't have 49 now. I already shorted you 10, but it all worked out, and we all become good friends at some point. It was that was day one. Yeah, that was day one, and day 2 through 350 days a year for 20 years,
Yeah.
What is that? You're the math guy.
Yeah, I don't know.
A lot of days.
Yeah.
Were all very exhilarating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a day that stands out more than any? I'm sure there's a lot of those, but is there a day that you could share with us that really stands out?
Well, so there's, okay. Well, we need to zoom out a bit. So in my career at French Laundry / Per Se, there were 4 fundamental pivots.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, how can you work at one restaurant for 20 years? Well, I had 50 jobs. I had 50 jobs and I had a lot of goals. So each one of those jobs and each one of those goals had those pivotal moments and that were able to hit those levels. And so my first 2 years, so I went from commis to pastry. Not a lot of people know that. There was something happened on pastry. Someone was not able to come to work ever again. And I worked pastry for 2 months. So I mentioned that the other day. Best thing ever happened, because I had 2 months of front row seats to the show, to where all I had to do was scoop ice cream. My responsibility was make some cookies and scoop ice cream. Not that it was that simple, but my responsibility was that simple. The team, which I was not a pastry guy, I had some pastry experience. Right. But so I got to watch service.
Yeah.
So I had front row seats to that service, and that was incredible. And so then Thomas comes to me about 2 months later, and he says, "Hey, do you have good experience? Do you think you can butcher?" Yeah. I'm like, yeah, I could cut some meat, no problem.
I got this.
got this.
Yeah.
Welcome to the pain train, my friend.
Yeah.
And so if you think about that, if you know, as chefs, we all can French a rack of lamb. We could all probably cut a lamb side a couple different ways. We can all probably cut a rabbit. But can you do 24 lamb racks precisely, consistently for time amongst everything else you have to do? Consistently. Boom, boom, boom. It's PIMDIS.
Yeah.
Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, the order of operations.
Yeah. We talked about that the other day.
Yeah.
So, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally.
Mm-hmm.
So parentheses, exponents, division, arithmetic.
No.
Wait, dear Aunt. Yeah. Division, arithmetic, multiplication. I'm all screwed up.
Addition, subtraction.
Yeah, something like that, right?
Yeah.
But we talked about how it's the order of operations when you work too.
Correct.
It's about having a system to work from here to there.
Yeah. Left to right, right to left, left to right, right to left, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
you have to do one thing first before you get to step two.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Staging, right? Yep. Like everything is staging, and like how do you do it? And at that point we're butchering in a hot kitchen, and very hot kitchen. Open windows. You can smell the beautiful flowers. You can hear the birds. It was like Willy Wonka, man.
Yeah.
It was a trip. It was great. But so that was impactful. And I think that everything that I did throughout that position set me up for everything else for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
That was the most in my career, that cutting meat at the French Laundry was the most impactful position I'd ever had in my life to that point that served me better throughout my life. And it was a lot because the structure of the expectations, not the structure of the program. I developed a structure for the program. And that was with blessing from Thomas, because it hadn't necessarily been set up yet. But he allowed me the ability to use the resources that we had to do that. And that's a very important thing about Thomas is that, you know, I worked with Thomas for 20 years. I did not cook with him a lot. I didn't see him cook a lot. It wasn't about that. It was a much more important thing that he provided for us. He would definitely come through and throw down a demo for Agnolotti and tell some stories, and there would be some things like that. It wasn't that he wasn't present, or it's not that. That's not a negative thing that I'm saying. What he provided for us, and if you think about it, that, I mean, you have per se French Laundry that the menu changes every single day. There's a minimal approval process for recipes. There's a minimal approval process for menus. If none, actually. The weight's put on the shoulders of the chef de cuisines and the sous chefs, executive sous chefs. Thomas is not approving recipes. He'll taste food. He will definitely observe when he's there. He's not always there. He doesn't see everything all the time. So what he was able to do, and what influences me greatly today, is he developed philosophy of cooking. And we know that from the essays in the first book. All of the essays in the first book are the initial beginnings of the philosophy, the importance of staff meal, right? The importance of rabbits. Those things teach us lessons. And once you buy into those lessons, you must buy into those lessons. It's a non-negotiable. You can't deny that staff meal needs to be good for your team. You cannot deny that once you kill that rabbit, you must serve that rabbit. You're a hack if you don't, right? Or what we say, what's the old thing? The shellmacher, right? Like you just can't do that. And so he provided financial resources for us, budgetary resources, for China, for product. Never once have I ever bartered, went back and forth. What's the word? Negotiated price for a product. First thing I do, if somebody brings me something that's compelling, how consistently can you give it to me? Okay. That's important. Where's it from? Who's it from? How consistently can you give it to me? Then, how much does it cost? Okay. So there's a story that Thomas tells about the 80s when Raquel closed. There was a big crash in the 80s, stock market crash. It really crumbled a lot of things there. And there was a chef that had a bakery, and the chef had the best croissants in New York City. He used the best European butter, had the best flour, fleur de sel, like whatever. And you know, which fleur de sel is easy for us today, but back then it was something special, right?
Yeah.
So he made the best croissants in the city. There's a stock market crash. So what did he do? Did he compromise the integrity of his ingredients? He has to have the same price, or maybe even more at that point. He did not compromise the integrity of the ingredients. He reduced the size of his croissant by 10%.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. So that's philosophy. Doesn't that say a lot? I would love to serve this beef to all my guests, but you know what? I can't serve 6 ounces, but I can serve 5 ounces, and it's exceptional. They'll enjoy it. If the guest wants more, we'll give them more. But that's 1 out of 25 or whatever. So those kind of lessons that we learned from Thomas were so much more important than a Bordelaise recipe.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant. The Bordelaise is irrelevant.
He was shaping minds and philosophies.
Yeah,
which I agree with, by the way, 100%. That is, and I use Thomas a lot as an example on the podcast, because I'll say people like Thomas or Renee or Ferran operate as the exception of the rule, because of how they think. That's what makes them great. That's why he is who he is, and Ferran's who he is, and Bocuse or whoever, is that they operate intellectually, philosophically, differently from everyone else, and that's what makes them exceptional.
I agree. Yeah, it's not about dollars and cents.
Yeah,
and that's what, you know, in my company today, when I work with people, the minute they start trying to split pennies, I already know that this is probably not going to be a good conversation. It's not going to work out for me, because I manage finances and resources with my knife, with how I sell things, with how I write menus, how do you utilize your trimmings. You know, Seth's famous saying was, they used to call Seth the accountant with the butcher's knife, and he would say, "Buy it once, sell it thrice." That was one thing, right? And so that resonates.
Buy it once, sell it thrice. Yeah.
But meaning you're using 100% of your trimmings. And the other thing he would say is, my trash cans are very light around here. We didn't waste. We didn't squander. And that's the same thing about the story of rabbits. Do not squander the life. If you had to snatch that rabbit out with your hand, slit its throat, break its neck, whatever, kill it, are you going to let any of it go to waste? That liver had better be in pate, my friend. Those shoulders had better be stuffed and braised. That saddle had better be cooked over the fire a la minute and just served to just this beautiful au point. You know, that's, you know, braise the legs in cream and serve with noodles. Make the most out of that animal as possible.
I want to ask, what was it like the day that you found out you were going to be the chef?
Ooh. That's a really, really good one. I can almost remember the date. It was probably October of 2012 or so. Well, so Thomas is very good at checking in with the upper level leadership. You know, at sometimes, and this is definitely not a negative thing I'm saying about him at all. If he's got 50 chefs at Per Se, he's got 50 chefs at French Laundry,
including Bouchon and everywhere else that he has.
Well, yeah, I'm speaking. Yeah.
So
you see me egotistically only speaking from fine dining, but but those other restaurants as well. He's got 1,000 chefs,
army
amongst other employees.
It's a big job.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, so he's definitely he's the upper level leadership members. He is very he's very good with checking in on.
Yeah.
What are your plans? What are your goals? What are your, you know, where do you want to be in 1 year? Where do you want to be in 5 years? And I told him every single time when I was in New York City. I mean, at this point, I think I had 2 children that were born in Manhattan. You know, I had developed a family and we were living our best lives, but I always said, I want to be the chef of French Laundry. Take me home. take me home. That's what I was saying all the time. I'm just waiting for you, man. Like, let me know because I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
And while I'm waiting, I'm developing my skill. And honestly, I was able to develop it outside of his direct eye,
Mm-hmm.
which was very powerful because, when the cat's away, the mice will play.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're responsible mice, you come up with some really good stuff. My goal was always to respect the business, respect the guest, respect the team. It was never egotistical. Respect the animals, respect the product. Be responsible. I want to run a great business. So I had amassed a very, very good skill set.
Mm-hmm.
And it was evident at some point that someone was going to become the next chef. Timothy had decided that he wanted to leave. And I said, look, this is my opportunity. And it definitely was not an ultimatum, but it's like, if it's not here, I need to go elsewhere. And Thomas, I don't even know if we had that conversation, but it was evident. I'd kind of started to branch out a little bit and have conversations with people, and he knew. I discussed it with him beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, no, you know what? I think it's time for you to come home.
Yeah.
And I left that meeting like a cloud nine, man. I was like a sultan on the flying carpet, dude. I'm just like going through the sky. Like, I'm just living my best life. And I remember going home and speaking with my wife. It was just like, we're going home. She's actually from Yountville.
Uh-huh.
So, or her mother lives in Yountville. She's from Napa, but it was incredible. It was incredible because we get to take the grandkids home. We're going home, man. We're going home. It's happening.
Yeah.
It was great. Really great.
So you're the chef now for the next 13 years. And French Laundry, towards the end, also French Laundry per se, correct?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What was the next 13 years like?
Well, it was a lot more mentorship
Mm-hmm.
than cooking. And, I won't go into a lot of crazy details about, we can talk for 5 hours about the stories, but I think really I transitioned from being, line chef, sous chef, executive sous chef, chef de cuisine. Now everything is my responsibility. So I put on my business hat,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to run the teams like I'm going to run the business and make them successful. My number one priority was to ensure that all of my team members at all times, regardless of rank, were successful and fulfilled in their positions. Of course, it did not always happen. And we went through that was when we went into the kitchen. There were some very impactful members of the team there, into the old kitchen, Elliot Bell, who was incredible, Jose Colian Jr., Joe Papich, Mike Wallace. There were a lot of members, Johnny Musicani, a lot of really good members who helped support me through that as we molded that business model into where we needed to move forward to do the new kitchen. We broke ground on the new kitchen, I think, at the end of 2013 ish. Got to check the calendar. And then we developed a $15 million kitchen. That was an amazing experience. I learned so much about design, layout, floor sinks, and convenience outlets, and electric load and all those things. But really, it was more about developing teams. And I think the most important thing that I learned in that process was working with the gardens.
Mm-hmm.
And I can speak for hours about that. That is truly the philosophy of my cuisine, is working with Mother Nature and being a conduit for the ingredient from the ground, respecting the farmer, taking it to the kitchen and processing it respectfully, preserving natural flavor, and serving it to the guests in a way that they can recognize. That is the philosophy of my cuisine. That is it. And of course, the philosophy that I've learned from Thomas. But over that time, that's kind of how it all wraps up. And at some point, actually, I had worked myself out of position, and it became evident it was time for me to move on. My job was done.
Mm-hmm. Next chapter.
Next chapter, baby. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. If I've done my work and my team is there to do it, what's left for me is to move forward.
There's like a Taoist expression. It's Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching. It says, when the master's work is done, he could look back and the people will say, amazing, we did it ourselves.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And we did it on our own.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the bump, the guides on when you go bowling.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just went in every time.
Yeah.
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 No guides necessary.
Yeah. You know, I want to talk about the book really quick. I'm thinking back.
Which one?
My book and your book, right? The French Laundry Percent, but also the first one I wrote.
Yeah.
So the first book that I wrote, this is like a little Easter egg for people that have the book or, you know, follow Chef's PSA and have been for a while, is there's a Chef's PSA in the original red book, How Not to Be the Biggest Idiot in the Kitchen. It says, don't mix your salt and pepper. And in there, there's a little narrative as to why not to do it. And then at the end of it, I say, but a great chef once told me the most fun you'll have is working in those kitchens where you mix your salt and pepper.
Yes, sir.
I never said who said that to me, but for people listening, that was you. That was you. You told me that years ago, and I was like, yeah, okay, that's funny.
It was a good time.
It was a good time,
right?
It was a good time. You know, that's the most fun you'll have in those kitchens where you're mixing the salt and pepper and seasoning everything all over the plancha.
Like that, yeah. Season the plancha before you lay the chicken down. Right. For sure.
But I remember we talked years ago. This is probably before the Per Se French Laundry came out, the book. And we had a long conversation about liaisons. And I remember you talking about roux. Yeah. And really, I don't want to say geeking out, but like you were blowing my mind back then when you were talking about roux. And there's so much. I mean, we could talk about the book in general. And by the way, I would say that the French Laundry Cookbook changed everyone's lives.
Mm-hmm.
Mine. But the new one, the French Laundry Per Se, I felt like for me, it's even better for me. And there's so much updated stories in there about the fish brining. And, you know, you talk about that. And there's also a lot of things that when the book came out, based on our conversation, and also when the book came out, I took like 5 things, immediately implemented them in the kitchen. It was like the pre-high. That was like, okay, great. There it is. What is it? 6% or something?
2%.
2%.
Yeah.
2%. There was the veg blanc.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, okay, we're doing this. So we're cooking our artichokes in it or turnips or whatever.
It works.
It works. It was great.
Yeah.
And the fish brining, the whole story on fish brining, I immediately implemented that because we weren't brining all our fish before that. So I said, this is great. Starting today, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So it was the pre-high, the fish brining. There was a lot, but those were like the 3 biggest ones that after I read the book, I called all the chefs in the office and said, okay, here's the new standard.
Start to work on this.
Yeah. Right away. Yeah. Get this. We don't, what do we do with it? Like, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Jacob, my chef de cuisine at the time, I think you know Jacob.
Yeah, he's a good cook.
Right away, he's like, yeah, I knew about pre. I was like, why the fuck didn't you say anything? You've known about this whole time and you waited for me to read the book. Yeah. But it was a great book. And even the updated big pot blanching. Yeah. Right. So what is that? The salt in there now is like, it's officially measured at
percentage. Yeah. And also in the ice bath.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. And it's such a great revision / update to the original. So if people don't have it,
evolution.
Yeah. It's great. It's a great book.
Yeah.
But while we wrap up, I mean, we need to do a part 2.
I agree. Yeah. We kind of dropped off. Yeah. We got some more.
Great. This is great. Yeah. But the last question I'll ask you, if you had a Mount Rushmore of chefs out there.
Ooh.
But I'm going to change it up because I always ask people their Mount Rushmore. I want to change it up a little bit on you.
Yeah.
If you had to give people that so many people came through your kitchen that you might not be on Mount Rushmore today, but you see them soon to be on the Mount Rushmore. So if you had to give 2 that you think are on Mount Rushmore and 2 that you think will be on Mount Rushmore.
Okay, that helps. That helps me because there's some individuals who may not even still be cooking.
Yeah.
Who are the best cooks I've ever worked with.
Yeah.
But so Mount Rushmore, and this only has to do with their technical ability, their sensibility, philosophy, and their creativity. The best chefs that I've ever worked with in my life would, from that perspective, will have to be Eli Jaime. Number 1, and this is all from the same camp. We're always talking about this is TFL stuff because we're in the same realm. Eli Jaime is probably the most creative, artistic person I've ever worked with. Paul Liebrandt, the king of creativity. and emotion.
Yeah.
I freaking love Paul. He's the best. He's so good, so creative, charismatic, just a good dude. So Eli, Paul, and I think they would be the kind of godfathers in that. And then there's a gentleman named Tyler Vorse, who's kind of on the outskirts right now. He's out there, incredibly creative, disciplined, the most badass line cook you've ever worked with. The dude is a machine, but he's also very creative. And then a friend of ours, the probably most artistic person I've ever worked with is Matthew Peters.
Yeah.
I mean, Peters is G.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, four is hard to do.
Yeah, so many.
Right? Yeah, and you just kind of hit me. I hadn't really thought about it, but there's a few that in my heart they're like dear. And so if my mi equipo out there, I love you guys. I'm sorry if I love all of you the same.
Yeah,
you know, my guys that are with me. My team that's with me, guys, gals, all around. They know I love them. They know I love them. We have done so much good work together. I'm ego free in the kitchen, and we there's no hierarchy.
Last question, Chef.
Yes.
Where can people find you?
Ooh, that's easy. Franklin, Tennessee.
Instagram page.
Chef David Breeden at Instagram. I've got, you know, my little company. We'll talk about that on phase 2, I guess.
Yeah, we'll have to do part 2.
Yeah, David at guestdrivenhospitality.com.
Awesome, brother.
Yeah.
It's good to see you. It's been long.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's been too long. This was fun.
All right, good deal.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you want to support the show, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else, make sure you leave 5 stars. It's a 5-star podcast. I'm a 5-star man. If you want to get Chef Brains, I have lots of books available, English, Spanish, Italian. Some are free. You get free ebooks. Go to chefspsa.com where you get all of that. If you want early access to podcast episodes, you could become a subscriber on Spotify and also on Substack. We'll see you next week. Hit the porno music.
No, it's André in the kitchen, mixing, dropping chef knowledge, no fiction, stirring up the beats, heating up the session. Listen close, class is in session.